Hi, my name is Lee, and I'm half of a new YouTube channel devoted to wrestling called On Your Marks. I share this channel with my friend Robert Ryan. He's actually the one who did all the kind of legwork for setting it up. And he said, hey, how about we create a channel where we just talk about wrestling? Now, I know that everybody on Earth has a wrestling channel, and I'd love to tell you that this one's going to be different, but it won't. This is done purely for selfish reasons. We discuss wrestling a lot. We figured we'd probably share it with the people, share our thoughts. Everybody's got thoughts. Sometimes maybe we'll come up with an idea that someone else might not have come up with. At the very least, we'll entertain ourselves. I'm not expecting this to go and blow up in any way. We're going to try to discuss all pay-per-views, all the major pay-per-views together. Other than that, most of the content will be either submitted by him or me individually. Sometimes we might collaborate on certain things. We're going to try to keep up with most of the major wrestling shows. I do not have access to ROH right now. I don't really have instant access to all New Japan Pro Wrestling, though I might be adding that to the subscriptions. But I do have the WWE Network, so I do see every pay-per-view, every NXT episode. I have access to 205 Live. I don't believe Robert has that, but he does see the major shows, so SmackDown, Raw, and he does come over for some pay-per-views, so we'll try to mix it up. He does get to see the shows eventually. We figured that, well, I figured at least that I would introduce myself before I did any kind of content pertaining to any TV shows. Just say a bit of my background in terms of wrestling, what I like, when I started watching it, when I stopped watching it, when I started again. Nothing really qualifies me to give real opinions on wrestling. Let's be honest. I'm a fan. That's all I am. But, you know, they always say the fans should decide what happens on the show, and we rarely get to. So at least we get to kind of live in that fantasy world while we're online. We can talk about as if we were the bookers. Just to give you a background, I started watching wrestling when I was a kid, late 80s, I would say. Probably 88, 89-ish. As a kid, I had, I'd say, 5 favorite wrestlers. Number 1, The Ultimate Warrior. No doubt, number 1. Also like Texas Tornado. I seem to like the really jacked guys. Right, the Texas Tornado was cool. Lots of punches. I love the Legion of Doom. And I also love Dusty Rhodes and the Polka Dots. Dusty Rhodes is the first wrestler I ever saw on TV. My parents tried to keep me away from wrestling, and then they accidentally kind of left me in front of the TV, and I just saw wrestling and fell in love with it. So growing up, I would watch wrestling. I didn't have cable, so I would watch wrestling just once a week, essentially. We had something called Maple Leaf Wrestling on at noon, and I would watch that. A little later on, we started getting Maple Leaf Wrestling at noon on one channel, and then at 1 o'clock, we get some WCW wrestling. And then at 2 o'clock, we get some WWE wrestling, but like better matches. I don't know what it was exactly. I think it was like snippets of Saturday Night Main Event or something like that. So certainly, for a while, 3 hours of wrestling on Saturdays was pretty sweet. In terms of live events, I did go to a few live events when I was a kid during the New Generation era when I come from Northern Ontario, tiny little town. But back in those days, I guess WWE wasn't doing all that well, so they were going to smaller markets, and we were rabid fans. We would hang out behind the arena and try to meet the wrestlers, do all that stuff. So I did go to a few shows as a kid. I would say I watched wrestling pretty much from 89 or 88 until 96-ish. And I know that's kind of when wrestling blew up. But yeah, basically, I would rent movies. I would rent the pay-per-views from the local video store. Those of you that are too young to know about that, that used to be how it worked. If you didn't have the pay-per-view, a few months later, you could rent it from the video store. And I loved a few of the events. I loved, I believe it's Survivor Series 91, maybe 92. It's the one where all the survivors fought at the end. So you had good guys versus bad guys at the end. You had Ultimate Warrior, Tito Santana, and Hulk Hogan versus 5 bad guys. And the good guys won, of course. Because back in the day, they actually wanted you to kind of leave the pay-per-view happy. And I also loved the 92 Royal Rumble. One of the best, well, it is probably the best Royal Rumble of all time. I stopped watching wrestling right when the Attitude Era started. It wasn't really a byproduct of me not liking wrestling anymore, as much as a byproduct of me not being able to watch wrestling. I didn't have cable, and wrestling started moving over to the cable channels. So I just didn't get to see it much. I saw it kind of intermittently between 2000 and I'd say 2002, 2003, because I was in university and some people liked it. So we did watch a little bit of it then. So I did get to a feel for the Attitude Era, but I didn't get to see it all. And I didn't get to see any of the WCW, NWO stuff, really. Like, I know a lot about it nowadays, just from getting back into wrestling. But basically, I would say, from 2003 until 2014, 15, I didn't watch wrestling. I knew a bit of the players. I caught it every once in a while, maybe once every 2 months, but didn't really get to watch it a ton. And then I actually started listening to podcasts. I said, you know what? I wonder what's happening in wrestling. So I started listening to some podcasts, and then I kind of discovered the podcast I listened to the most was the Solid Monster Sounds Off. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. It's pretty popular. And he gave excellent kind of summaries of the TV shows that were actually playing. So, you listen to that for a little while, and you start going like, you get a lot of background information about the storylines, and all of a sudden you get intrigued. So I started watching interviews, a lot of shoot interviews, things like that. And then I kept listening to the Solid Monster, and then eventually I said, you know what, I need to see what he's talking about. And I started watching wrestling again. And I'd be lying if I said that, oh man, wrestling really came back for me as a love of something. No, I kind of didn't really like the product that I was watching that much. I liked it, but I loved hearing other people discuss it. I just like discussions, right? I'm a big fan of forums, things like that. So I like that. So I've been watching wrestling fairly regularly. The more I watched, the more I kind of got into kind of giving my own opinions about it, talking to friends about it. And then I just kind of evolved. I got the WWE Network, and then I started watching NXT, and I actually really liked NXT. So for a while, that was kind of my main thing I watched, and then I would kind of fast forward through the two shows, Raw and SmackDown. But eventually I started kind of listening to everything, just wanting to hear what the Solid Monster was talking about and just forming my own opinions. So I've been watching everything pretty much for a couple years now. I'm always an optimist when it comes to the product. I know there's a lot of stuff that's disappointing. I fully admit it. But at the end of the day, I still love wrestling. I still love watching. Even the worst episode of Raw is I'll still find some things I like in it, and that's kind of what I like about it. I also fairly recently started watching Impact. Now, the brand new Impact I haven't seen yet because I'm a little bit behind. But what happened is I live in Ottawa, and for those of you who don't know the whole saga of Impact, basically they were bought out by a Canadian company, and they decided to have Bound for Glory, their biggest pay-per-view, in Ottawa, at a kind of old arena, kind of a historical building, but they dressed it up as the Impact Zone. And I thought that was a really cool thing, even if I wasn't a huge fan of Impact. I never really watched TNA. I saw a few episodes, but I was pretty pumped about seeing live wrestling, especially with the fact that it kind of appealed to me that it wasn't WWE. I did see one WWE event maybe 7 years ago, but I like that this was kind of the minor leagues, but not quite the minor leagues. I knew the production would be decent. I knew that there'd be some people that I recognized from WWE, and I also knew that there'd be some people on the show that would probably, fairly quickly end up on WWE, so I like that. So basically, when I learned that Bound for Glory was coming to town, I started watching Impact Wrestling, and it was certainly a mixed bag. I actually thought the production value was decent, better than I thought it would be. And some of the wrestling was all right. Dan Lambert was a great heel. I have to say, that guy was entertaining. So I started watching Impact so that I would know the storylines going into the local tapings. Here they did Bound for Glory, and then they did 5 days of taping. I actually attended 3 days altogether. and I brought some people out for their first wrestling shows, which was pretty fun. My friend's 7-year-old kid got to scream "Holy shit" and not get yelled at, which was pretty cool. Seeing him freak out over that. So yeah, that was a great time. I really enjoyed that. So I'm probably going to commit to watching more Impact. I hear that the addition of Cyrus Overhuge. I know that's his Twitter handle, but I always forget his name. Don Callis. Don Callis and Scott D'Amore, I think, took over the production or booking for the show, and it sounds like it's pretty good so far. So we'll give that a shot. It's a 2-hour show. It's a lot easier to watch than a 3-hour Raw, so I like that. So yeah, that's kind of my background on wrestling. I am going to a live event coming up. I just bought tickets for me and Robert, so we do plan on going to a live event. Maybe we'll report on that when we come back. Like I said earlier, we don't expect this channel to blow up. There are 1,000 wrestling channels out there, and to be honest with you, the production values are very good, and the content is very good, and we get great guests and all that stuff. And truth be told, we're kind of two older guys. We've got lives going on, and we're probably not able to put that kind of effort in, nor do we have the talent to do so. Robert is certainly better at production than I am. This is my cell phone with a lamp kind of blinding me right now. That's what I set up. I didn't even bother to finish my glass of Coke before I started this. Yeah, so we're going to be producing random content. It might be mostly audio. It might be video. I have another YouTube channel I have a video game collection, a vintage video game collection, and I don't usually go on camera, but I felt like, it's a little bit more honest. If you show your face, you're going to give your opinions, might as well at least show yourself. I'm going to try to mix it up with video, sometimes audio if I'm feeling lazy. Robert is able to kind of put a couple of images on top of some audio, and we can do that. So we might sneak in some podcasts. We were talking about the type of content we're going to do. Certainly we're going to do some reviews of some of the shows. I think Robert is a little bit more cynical than I am, so at least we'll have different perspectives. I'm a little bit more positive. He's a little more cynical. We have some general opinions on kind of booking errors that are being made versus things that we actually like. I think we're going to probably do some Q&As. Maybe I was talking about sending him some questions and he answers them blindly kind of live. I thought that would be interesting. Yeah, we might talk about historic moments in wrestling too. We won't necessarily just talk about new stuff. I'm going to try to cover as much stuff as possible. I know Robert's definitely going to do some SmackDown and Raw, and I can contribute to that as well. But I'm certainly going to try to do some NXT stuff. And if you guys like Impact, maybe I'll do some Impact. Even if I get 5 views, I don't care. It's 5 people, So we're going to do some Impact. We're going to try to do some New Japan if I can sneak it in. I have a friend at work and she loves New Japan Pro Wrestling, so she can actually inform me and maybe I can relay some of her thoughts because she was not a wrestling fan and her husband kind of got her into it and now she's nuts for it and it's kind of fun to see. So yeah, expect more content coming up. This is the first video. I will probably never go this long again unless I'm with Robert and we're doing kind of a big show. Truth be told, I've never made a video even close to 15 minutes, so this is a new record for me. All right, thanks for watching.